Welcome to Learner's Planet, children. Children, this is the session about growing plants. So in this session, we will study about agriculture. So children, this is session 3 about the growing plants. So let's start with this session. So now we are going to study about the various steps of agriculture. Children, this is just an outlook of the steps of agriculture. So first of all, we will just read and go through this flow chart, and then we will study the steps of agriculture in detail, right? So the first step of agriculture is that the field is plowed, right? Secondly, manure is added to the soil. Thirdly, seeds are sown after adding manure to the soil. Fourthly, when the seeds are sown, after that the field is irrigated with water, right? Irrigation itself means water. It is provided with water. So if we will write the field is irrigated, then also it is okay. This is just for the understanding of yours. Then pesticides are sprayed to protect the crops, right, from the insects, birds and pests also. Then crops are harvested. So this is the final step. Alright. So mainly the steps of agriculture includes 6 steps. Alright. And now we are going to study the steps of agriculture in detail. So let's start with this. Yes, so the first step is plowing of field. Children, as you can see here in this picture, what you can see? That a person is plowing the field, right? How is it possible? What is actually plowing? First, let us get familiar with the term plow. What is actually plow? Plow is a tool used in the farming for cultivation of soil, right? What is this person doing? He is actually plowing the field with the help of a plow. This is a plow, right? So it is a tool which is used in farming to grow crops in a large quantity, and plow is a tool which is used for the cultivation of soil. So we cultivate the soil with the help of this tool. After we use this tool, what happens? Actually, what we do? Why do we need to cultivate the soil? Yes, we need to cultivate the soil because it is used in the preparation of soil for sowing seeds or planting, right? So if we will plow the field, how we will plow the field? First of all, we will use this tool for the cultivation of soil, and then it will be used for the preparation of soil. Why do we need to prepare the soil? Yes, we need to prepare the soil for sowing the seeds. And what do we call the other process of sowing seeds? Is called as planting. That means planting the trees or planting the crops, right? Thirdly, what happens? Plowing can be done with our hands, or it can be done with the help of a machine like tractor. Children, in the ancient times, we do not have such tools. We used to have only our bare hands, right? We do not use any type of tools. So in earlier times, in this way, farmers used to plow the field, right? So plowing was done with the help of bare hands, right? And they use a very simple tool, right? So first of all, it was done with the bare hands. After that, the simple tool came, which is known as plow, right? So with the help of a plow, farmers used to plow the field. But as the technology increased, and now in modern days, we use tractor, right, with the plower. So we can also use the plower as a machine or a tool by attaching it above the tractor or behind the tractor, right? So this way, now properly plowing is done with the help of tractor. So you must have seen tractor in the market, or if you visit any field or any farm. So in the early morning, farmers used to use this like of machine like tractor for plowing the field, right? Then why is plowing actually important? Why do we plow the field? Yes, you know that we use it for the cultivation of soil, and we also know that we use in the preparation of soil. But why do we need to plow the field? Yes, plowing is done to turn over the upper layer of soil. Turn over means, yes, for doing it up and down, up and down. The simple process is done. Up and down of the soil. That is turning over the upper layer of soil. If we turn over the upper layer of soil, what happens? Yes, if we turn over the upper layer of soil, it will bring the fresh nutrients to the surface. And when it brings the fresh nutrients to the surface, then what happens? Yes, the plants, the crops will get all the important nutrients, right? So by plowing, what will happen? The importance of plowing is that it will turn over the upper layer of soil and it will bring the fresh nutrients to the surface, right? So if there will be fresh nutrients available to the soil, then soil can provide all the vital nutrients to the plant, because plants absorb these nutrients from the soil only, right? As we discussed in the previous session, what we discussed in the previous session? Yes, that plants need to require air, water, warmth, nutrients and space, right? So how do they get nutrients? They get nutrients from the soil. That is why soil plays a very important role in germination of plants, right? A baby plant or a seedling can grow from a seed if it gets the right amount of all the factors like water, air, warmth and nutrients, right? Otherwise the seed would not be able to survive, right? So after the seed germinates, what happens? It will struggle for all these factors, and after struggling for all the factors and getting the right amount of all the factors, it will be able to grow into a very healthy plant or a very healthy crop, right? So plowing is very much important because it provides fresh nutrients to the surface of the soil, and then soil plays an important role ahead for the process of planting a tree, right, or the growing of a tree. Okay children, so for the crops, plowing of fields is very much important, and nutrients are also helpful for growing and the germination of plants. The second step is adding manure to the soil. Yes children, first of all you should know that what is manure, right? And then you should also know that why do we add manure to the soil, right? What is the importance of adding manure to the soil? So first of all, you should be familiar with the term manure. So what is actually manure children? Manure is a dead organic sub with the soil after some time, and even manure also consists of the dead plants, but as well as it consists of the dead animals or the animals excreta, that is feces, right? So the animals excreta or feces, right? they mix up with the soil very well naturally. We do not use to mix it up, right? We don't mix it up with any machine or any tool. It is a natural process, right? So naturally these dead plants, that is the shed off of the leaves and falling to the ground and then mixing up with the soil, right? So these dead plants and animals' excreta and feces will mix up with the soil naturally by themselves, and then it will be converted into an organic matter. So this is actually a dead organic matter and we term it as manure. So actually it is very much beneficial to the plants because it provides nutrients to the plants. But now how does it play an important role? Yes. Manure is a dead organic matter and it is used as an organic fertilizer in agriculture. Why do we call it as fertilizer? Right? Organic matter, it is an organic matter, right? But it is used as an organic fertilizer. Now, how is it applied? Manure is used as an organic fertilizer because organic means it is made up of an organic matter. It has been made up from the organic matter. But now these nutrients which have been provided from the dead animals and plants will mix up with the soil and they will make the soil fertile, right? So we call the soil as fertile when all the vital nutrients are provided to the soil, right? So when all these nutrients will mix up with the soil, it will make the soil fertile, right? And it is an organic matter. So organic matter will mix up with the soil to make the soil fertile. And that is why we can say that it can be used as an organic fertilizer in agriculture, right? So in agriculture, what do? We plant many trees or we grow many plants on a very large scale, right? So the practice of growing plants on a very large scale is called agriculture, right? And so we use this manure, which is a dead organic matter, we use it as an organic fertilizer because there is the soil which is now fertile in nature. So it will act as a fertilizer in the process of agriculture. Alright. So what is actually manure? It is a dead organic matter. Now what it does to the soil? It provides essential nutrients to the soil and makes the soil fertile. And that is why we call it as organic fertilizer. We can use it as an organic fertilizer, right? For example, which type of nutrients does it provide to the soil? Yes, it provides nitrogen, phosphorus, etc. Right? So it will provide the nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus. But when it provides nitrogen and phosphorus, what is the actual role of these nutrients? Yes, we will take one example, that is nitrogen. Actually what happens? Nitrogen is a nutrient which is provided to the soil. How is it provided to the soil? We do not spray it, right? It happens naturally. How? Because nitrogen is trapped by the bacteria which is present in the atmosphere and also in the soil, right? So nitrogen will be trapped by the bacteria in the soil, right? It is also present in the atmospheric air, and from the atmosphere also it can get nitrogen, and even nitrogen can be provided to the soil by the dead plants and animals. From the animals' excreta, this nitrogen wastes come out, and when the animals' excreta or the feces mixes up with the soil, nitrogen is already provided to the soil, right? And the bacteria also act as an advantage or act as a medium to provide nitrogen to the soil. So bacteria is also helpful, which will make the soil fertile, right? And even the animal excreta and the dead plants are also very helpful, and they also make this process very valuable, right? So in this way, many things combine and makes the soil fertile. So always remember that nitrogen, phosphorus, these are the essential nutrients which can be provided by the dead organic matter called manure, and it can also be trapped by the bacteria, and all these factors combine to form the soil fertile, right? To make the soil fertile. Alright children, so adding manure to the soil is also a very important step of agriculture. The third step is sowing of seeds. So children, what is actually sowing? Sowing is the process of planting seeds, right? We plant seeds, and this is the process known as sowing. And how do we do sowing? We do sowing, or sowing is done by scattering the seeds in the ploughed field. We have already ploughed the field, right? And now we use to sow, right? So sowing is actually planting the seeds in the field. And how do we plant seeds in the field? By scattering the seeds in the ploughed field, right? And why this sowing of seeds is important? It is important actually because seeds germinate into a new plant, right? So for a seed to germinate into a new plant, it has to be present in the ploughed field. And how it will be possible? How can it be present in the ploughed field? When we will scatter the seeds in the ploughed field, right? So this process, this whole process is known as sowing of seeds. And finally the seeds will germinate into a new plant. First it will germinate into a baby plant or the seedling, alright? And they will get the stored food from the cotyledons or the seed leaves. And after that they will grow bigger and bigger in size. The next step is irrigating the field. Yes children, the field is first irrigated, right? As you can see here in this picture, right? This process is actually called irrigation. What happens in irrigation? The field is first irrigated, as water is very much important for the growth of a plant. Children, we discussed this before that all the plants need to grow with the help of the factors like water, air, warmth and nutrients, right? Formed from the sun, right? So water is also one of the very important factor for the growth of a plant, right? So we should provide water for the growth of a plant. We cannot spray water in all the fields by bare hands or with bare hands, right? It is not possible for us to spray water all over the field, right? So this is a very new method, that is irrigation, which will provide the water itself as per the required quantity of the crop or the conditions of the crop. Water is being provided to the field, entire field, right? And that is why we say that the field is irrigated. Alright, so this way the required amount of water is provided to the entire field. And why is it important? Because water is essential for the process of photosynthesis. Now how is it possible? Yes, as we have studied that photosynthesis is which process? It is the process in which the plant grows with the help of getting sunlight, water, carbon dioxide, and then it is able to prepare the food, right? So leaves play important role over here, right? Leaves are a very important part of a plant which will absorb water, then carbon dioxide and even sunlight, right? and it will prepare food called glucose or sugar, right? So water is essential for the process of photosynthesis. That is why we need to irrigate the field. If we will not irrigate the field, the leaves would not be able to prepare food, and if they would be not be able to prepare food, then we will not be able to get the crops, right? So this is also very important step, that is irrigating the field. Then the next important step is spraying pesticides. So children, first of all you should know that why do we need to spray pesticides? Yes. What are pests, children? Pests are living organisms that can cause damage to crops or other animals, right? So if the pests will damage the crops, then we will not be able to get the crops. Then there is no importance of growing the seeds in the field or planting the crops in the field, right? If the pests will destroy them or if they will damage them. So for preventing this thing, we need to use pesticide, right? For example, insects, mice, fungi, etc. They are the pests, they are the organisms that can cause damage to the crops or other animals, right? So we need to have a chemical, that is a pesticide, which will kill the pests. So what will happen? These pests will die and they will not damage the crops, right? And then we will be able to get the crops in a healthy condition. Alright. So pesticide is a mixture of certain chemical substances which is used to kill the pests. Right. So we need to kill the pests because they can cause damage to crops. And that is why we spray pesticides. So this is also nowadays one of a very important step of agriculture, that is spraying pesticides, right? So let's see one example or one picture by which you can come to know that spraying pesticides will kill the pests, right? See this picture, children. This person is spraying pesticide. You can see here, this is a type of container, a very small container which he is carrying with himself, right? And this is a type of a pipe from which he can spray the pesticides, right? So he is spraying pesticides all over the field to kill the pests, alright? And in this way we can prevent the crops to getting damaged by the pests, right? So this is the picture which is showing the person spraying pesticide. Then the final step of agriculture is that crops are harvested, right? So this is the last step of agriculture where the ripened crops are cut and gathered, right? When finally the crops are ripened, in the ripened condition, then all the farmers cut them and gather them, right? You can see in this picture, this is an example of a maize plant or a corn plant, right? So this is a farmer who is just collecting. First it has been cut and then it is gathered. So always remember that ripened crops are always cut and gathered, not the raw crops, alright? So the ripened crops will be cut and then it will be gathered. And finally this is the last step of agriculture where we can say that when the crops are cut and gathered, it is known as harvesting of crops, right? So this is the final step of agriculture, that crops are harvested, right children? So children, crops need protection before and after harvesting also. Now all the steps of agriculture is finished, right? It is completed. But now what? Now what we will do further? Yes. we need to follow some rules also. Why? To protect the crops even before harvesting and after harvesting. Right? We need to protect the crops from the birds, insects, rodents like rats, etc. Right? Because before harvesting and after harvesting, what happens? Birds or insects or rodents attack on the crops and they will eat them, right? Or they can damage them. So finally there will be no use of planting crops, right? That is why we need to have protection, that is protection of crops before and after harvesting. And that is why they are sprayed with chemicals called as pesticides, as we discussed above, to protect them from insects and also from the other harmful animals, right? And the other method is also there. This is a very interesting method that is used by the farmers. Farmers also use scarecrows, right? This is the scarecrow. So what happens? The term itself explains that scarecrow means it will scare the crow away, right? So farmers use scarecrows in their fields to protect their crops from birds like crow. Alright, otherwise they will damage the crops or they will eat the crops, right? So farmers also use this method, which is a very interesting method, that is using scarecrow in their fields to protect crops from birds. There is also another method known as step farming. So what is actually step farming, children? Let's see. The process by which crops are grown by cutting steps in the mountains is known as step farming, right? What happens actually in this thing? Yes, step farming is cutting the steps in the mountains, because this step or this process will help the different crops to grow, right? We can grow different crops in the different steps, right? And the other thing, the advantage of this process, of using this process, is that here you can see in the picture, this is a sloping land, right? It is slanting land, right? So what happens on the sloping land? If there will be rainfall, even it is heavy rainfall or very less rainfall, what will happen? In the heavy rainfall, the crops are not able to grow, right? The crops with the less amount of water, less requirement of water, will not be able to grow if they will be provided with the much amount of water, right? So there should be moderate rainfall, or there should be moderate required quantity of water should be provided to the crops. But what is happening in this step farming process? Even it is heavy rainfall or less rainfall, what happens in the sloping lands or in the hilly areas? What happens in the hilly areas? There is plenty of rainfall, right? So even in the plenty of rainfall or heavy rainfall, the water will come down and it will flow in such a way that it will provide the water to all the crops available over here, right? Planted over here, and it will provide the water, and that is why, because of this, the plant would be able to grow, or the crops would be able to grow, right? So the crops will grow very healthy, in a very healthy condition, right? And because this process is very important and very useful for us. So the process by which crops are grown by cutting steps in the mountains is known as step farming, and it is used nowadays a lot because it is very helpful in many ways. So children, finally we conclude that different crops are grown in different seasons because crops require different conditions to grow, right? So there are different types of crops. They are divided into some divisions, right? So we will study about different types of crops in the next session. Alright children? And why do we need to grow different crops in different seasons? Because different crops will require different conditions to grow. For example, they are divided into Kharif and Rabi crops. So we will study about the types of crops in detail in the next session. Alright children, so I hope you are clear with this session and you enjoyed the session and learned about the steps of agriculture. Alright children, till then keep learning, keep enjoying. We will meet in the next session.